Welcome back, warriors. Kwe Min Deluizi Pam Palmater, and I'm the host of this podcast, The Warrior Life. We cover everything from native sovereignty, treaties and land back, to decolonization, reconciliation, and how to support the struggle. So if you're interested in hearing from native peoples from sovereign nations all over Turtle Island, talk about their role in Indigenous resistance, resurgence, and revitalization, this is the podcast for you. And there are so many free ways that you can help support this podcast. You can like it on your favorite podcast app, or you can rate it and give it 5 stars, hopefully, or share it on your social media. Even teachers can use it in their university or high school classes, for example. On today's podcast, I have an incredible guest who describes himself as a 6'2" funny guy. But you might also know him if you follow him on his socials. He's the guy who eats Skittles on his spaghetti. So stay tuned. This is going to be an awesome podcast. Gwe, Tansei, Sego, Ani Buju. Welcome back to a new season of the Warrior Life podcast. And it just so happens that it's Mi'kmaq History Month for all you Mi'kmaq listeners and viewers out there. But I actually prefer to call it Mi'kmaq History and Present Day Month because we're still here, actually. And today's guest is someone who is literally perfect for Mi'kmaq History Month. History and Present Month, and not just because he's Mi'kmaq, but he educates the public on all of his social media about Mi'kmaq history, culture, and language on all of his socials, and he also talks about current issues. He's a lawyer, public speaker, a runner, yogi, and he describes himself as a 6'2" funny guy. And I would add that there has never been a time in my life where I have not seen him with literally a giant smile on his face. Welcome to the Warrior Life podcast, Jarvis.
Well, and thank you so very much for that, Pam.
Yeah, it's we were talking before this whole thing started that I have been trying to get him on this podcast, like for so many different reasons. You know, there's always someone that you want to talk to for maybe they're the champion of language, or maybe they're, an actor or something, but you're like 10 different things. You're literally 10 different reasons why I wanted to have you on this podcast. So I am so excited to get right into it. But before we do, protocol suggests that I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and where you're from in the way that you like to.
Well, I'm Pam. So my name is Jarvis Googoo. I am from Wagamah, Unamagi. Roughly translates to the head of the waters, the end of the bay. It's where the Bedore Lakes end on Cape Breton. I went to an Indian day school from 1985 to 1993. So I do tell people I'm a part of that class action lawsuit. And I did subsequently graduate from a Mi'kmaq Ganamwe on reserve school. Did my undergraduate degree at St. Mary's University in sociology, criminology. And then I earned a law degree from Dalhousie Law School. And got called to the bar in 2009. I don't practice law anymore, but I have a non-practicing status. I'm still a member of the bar to this day. So I get all the nice emails on invites. I did practice a little bit as an Aboriginal human rights legal advisor for a while, and then I worked for the provincial government as a senior policy analyst, and for a couple of years. And one of my highlights with that was being a part of the logistics and plan committee for the Atlantic Truth and Reconciliation Commission event in October 2011. Wow. I got to volunteer very extensively with that. People ask me what I did. I said, you know what? I usually carried a lot of boxes around, and I was kind of like a guide runner for elders and survivors who weren't familiar with the city or weren't familiar with Truth and weren't familiar with the layout of the World Trade Convention Center. So I was like, oh no, Scotia Square is this way, or if you want Tim's, I'll walk you there myself. And I also like to say my favorite thing was just getting caught tea for the gang captain prior to all the engagements there. So that was my highlight, I would say, with the provincial government. And eventually I got a day job with the Atlantic First Nations Policy Advocacy Secretariat Organization here in the Atlantic. For 9 years, I worked in health.
Oh, wow.
And actually, just last month, I accepted a new position as in economic development. So I've gone from health to economic development, but the absolute reality is economic development is such an important thing we need to do in our community. So I also like to think that when I was in law school, I remember up years always telling me, with a law degree, you can do anything after law school.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? You are right about that, because I essentially went into health and policy without a health background or a policy background. And I did that for 9 years with my old position, 2 years with the province, and now going to economic development. I'm like, yeah, come from a sociology, criminology, law background, but you know what? I see it as a new exciting challenge. So that's kind of like me with the day job, the quote unquote professional side of me, more or less. Side stuff, as you were saying, it's Mi'kmaq History and Present Month. I never heard it that way before, and that is such a great idea. Like, there's things going on to this day that matter, but at the same time, I like learning pre-contact way of life, pre-contact language, but it is also still as you know, it's important to remember there are, impacts on us because of colonialism.
Yep.
And not just those impacts of, like, especially the 17 and the 1800s, it's how it spills over into the 1900s, into this day. I'm like, yes, it's nice you got rid of all those racist laws from the 1800s, but now we got like the intergenerational trauma to undo because of what happened way back then. And as we know, it's a continuous thing that's going on. And so with sharing about being about history, culture, etc., it's one of those weird things I want to say I spilled into. So in 2016, for fun, and I just started doing a daily post in the month of October on social media about random little bits. And then, like, the difference between Mi'kmaq and Mcmac, or how Mi'kmaq is a verb-focused language, our actual historical territories of what they were. And after that month was over, I kind of not did anything on social media too much with that for a couple of years. And I believe it was, you may remember, after they found the mass, they confirmed the mass graves started in Kamloops with 215 bodies of children, and then we saw more mass graves being confirmed. For me, my perspective, my thoughts were that I'm happy Canada was outraged and angry about that. And of course, it's the usual question, which I want to roll my eyes up at, but I can't, about the whole, how could this happen here? I'm like, yeah, this is normal. Hearing about racism was normal growing up. I've been hearing from my own family explaining racism to me, I'm going to say as far back as grade 2, grade 3. And the first time, I want to get back into what I want to say about trivia, but I want to explain about racism first, is how it was explained to me. And I remember I have an aunt and an uncle, and it was, I think, 1990. Oh, this was the early 90s. And I remember I was a student at the day school. I remember it was my eldest aunt, my Aunt Joan, she mailed me a globe for my birthday. And I was in grade 2, grade 3, I don't remember. And then my uncle, my godfather, my Uncle Ken, my Gekwinit, one night actually, at my grandmother's house, he sat me down. He showed me the globe. And he started pointing to countries in Europe and then pointing to various places in North America and then South America. And I don't remember the details, but he said, this country stole land from those people. Those countries stole land from that people, etc. And I'm a child. I'm not understanding. Steal land? I don't get it. But he said, no. And this was his language. This is not my language I would use. He said, this was Indian land. And he said, these white people stole it from us. these white people stole it from them. He was actually breaking down Spain, France. I'm like, that's amazing. And that was the first time I remember really learning of it in a historical sense. And the other first memory I have of us being neglected, ignored, minimized, tossed aside was, I think it was 1992. And it was the Canada 125 celebrations. I remember Canada 125 plastered everywhere. Big advertisements, big promotion, big celebration. And again, this was with my Aunt Joan. There was on television a big ad for 125 Canada. And my Aunt Joan, and this I'm quoting her, and I watching it, and she says, "There's not one goddamn Indian on that thing." And I was like shocked because first off, growing up in a very Catholic home, saying "goddamn" was like worse than the F word. So I knew she was mad. I knew she was mad. And then I thought to myself when she said, "Not one goddamn Indian's up there," and I was like,
Ooh.
they ignored us. It's great you're showing all these different people, but I didn't see us up there. And
Wow.
to me, that's like the start of me either experiencing racism or at least my family explaining to me this is what racism is. And stealing the land, ignoring us. Of course, it's a multitude of so many different ways now. But these were like my earliest experiences as a child learning about racism from my family. The big historical broad sense, but as well as, hey, we're just going to ignore you, not give you a voice or give you a perspective.
Yeah.
So going back to the present, so there was all this outrage here. And for me, it's like, I kind of like wanted to learn. Even though I was upset, just shocked that this happened, I'm like, no, we knew people died at these schools. We knew that. I grew up learning about that. We read Isabel Knockwood's Out of the Depths in like grade school.
Yeah.
This wasn't a book I was assigned a seminar class in an upper year level university. This is something I got as a kid in the 1990s. And I'm glad I learned it then because, I don't know, maybe my shock and outrage ain't there. I'm like, oh yeah, sadly, racism's normal. I'm hurt. We're all hurt. But to say this is the worst thing ever happened in Canada, like, no, this was a normal thing that happened in Canada.
Yeah.
It was one school. There's other ones.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what? People want to learn, so I'm going to help them learn. So what I love about my iPhone is notes. Jot stuff down. I'm obsessed with jotting stuff down and going back to it later. I like to think I have a great memory because I just shared with you crazy stuff from when I was a kid, but I like detailed notes. And so everything I did in October 2016, which was also a very busy month because I kept researching because I needed to come up with new history every night. So I was up sometimes till 11 o'clock, going through Daniel Paul's Screwing Up the Savages, or going through Bernie Francis' book. Need something new. So eventually I got all that there. So Danny Paul and Bernie were incredible sources. And just like other stuff I knew on my own. And like, I'm a lawyer, so like I can dig through trees myself. So, so in June 2001, I started sharing more. And I would say around then, the Twitter followers skyrocketed. I eventually hit over 10,000 around time, and I didn't want to talk about that on Twitter, but in my mind, I was like, I'm very giddy and excited that I broke the 10,000 mark. Not verified yet, but like, let's be mature. Let's not acknowledge the number, and let's just be thankful people are learning and listening. And so I do want to do new research, but at the same time, I find as you gain followers, new ones don't know or learn or may have missed out what you have, because a lot of us have lots of tweets. I have over 100,000 done. And I don't expect anyone to go back to October 2016 to learn how, in Mi'kmaq, colors are verbs, because no color is permanent. This is orange. I put this outside, over time it fades, leaves change. Colors are actions, and that's the way our language is. A leaf is not going to be green forever. A leaf is going to turn a different color, hence the way we describe it. It's turning orange or red or yellow or brown eventually because leaves are going to die. And, it's the effects of weather. Things are being a constant stage of motion. Like, we're not static, it's in flux there.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that I just told you is just stuff Bernie taught me there. So after June 2001, I had a friend of mine. She is the sister and sister-in-law of two friends of mine I went to law school with, her Dr. Jill. She's a mother, and she has two girls in Brownies, Cubs, or Sparks, one of them. I don't know Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, or the ranks or anything, but she asked me, could I come speak to her group? I'm like, I would love to. So me and my wife carried our little Sheltie Lulu. We went out and I demonstrated what a sweetgrass smudgeon was, and how I was taught to pick it. And I gave them very basics of, like, what is Mi'kmaq? Because sometimes in Nova Scotia, and I respect this, but I think sometimes some people get confused and they think Nova Scotia is only Mi'kmaq. I'm like, no, it is more than that. It's PEI, Eastern, Northern New Brunswick, Gaspé Peninsula, and Newfoundland since 1860. So I like when you say, welcome to Mi'kmaq. That's great. I would like to see that sign actually at, the appropriate spot after the St. John River. Like, actually, this is our territory here. It's not this colonial boundary called the province of Nova Scotia.
Yes.
Our actual boundary
Yes.
is St. John River. So put the welcome to Mi'kmaq sign here. And then on the other side, you're going to have the welcome to Wolastoqey territory.
Yes.
And then you talk to the Wolastoqey about how they want to do the welcome. And, maybe have a big tourist stop. Like when you go to PEI on the bridge there, they're all excited. I'm like, great. Maybe we should have our basket shops on the other side of the river and say, hey, welcome to our territory. You are now Mi'kmaq culture. Learn something. Same way when I go to downtown Vancouver, if I drove there, I think it'd be neat to see the actual welcome to our Coast Salish territory. Like, hey, I'm honored as a Mi'kmaq visitor to be in your land. I'm here to learn. So I found after she asked me to speak, I've been more and more very, very inclined to speak. And I found, especially after June 2001, organizations, so many. And yes, Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, daycares, and then some are grade schools, elementary, junior high. And then, of course, what I call the adults, people with health regulation, people who are members of health regulatory bodies, engineering firms, various departments with, provincial governments. It is stuff I love doing. I don't want to say I do ask sometimes, what do you want me to talk about? Do you want me to talk about just like our way of life beforehand? Do you want me to talk about, truth and reconciliation? Do you want me to talk about peace and friendships? Do you want me to talk about racism? I will get into that. Likewise, I'll talk about birchbark trees. Like, what is the focus here?
Yeah.
I remember last year what I was really impressed with. There was this one group of Sparks, I think. It was late second or last Wednesday of October, and they were young, so I was used to speaking to girls around that age. But what I was very impressed was when I mentioned about, do you want Orange Shirt Day means? They actually got into, I'll say, good legal questions about the Indian residential school and the school up in Shubenacadie. And I was like, I expect this from adults. I don't expect these good legal questions from like young girls. But at the same time, it's like, I'm very proud of you for asking these questions. And like, basically, why would the government let this happen? I'm like, that is such a great question. So I got a little boring and talked about the Constitution and, federal provincial jurisdiction a little bit. And I saw heads nodding and the eyes of curiosity. So I was like, oh, wow, they really are learning. And like, if what I'm saying might sound like a blur, makes no sense, I'm thinking and hoping, at least, as they go on in junior high, high school, university, etc., my thoughts with speaking to children would be, they get the idea, hey, this was wrong. Maybe this is why, health statistics are like this today. Or, economic development could be a bit more, but why are some places struggling? and maybe they had like more severe more severe impacts of colonization. Like we've all experienced it. Maybe some communities, because of the way Indian Affairs didn't want reserves along major places. Like we all know about the relocation of Membertou there in Sydney, on Sydney River. And Membertou still went on to do well. Like I want people to ask what has happened. And of course, what can they do about it? And I'll save more on that for the end there. So yeah, I just speak to a variety of groups. And one question comes up, and I'm gonna be blunt honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes they ask me about payment and stuff. And I say, well, it's going to depend. So it depends who you are, and it depends what I'm talking to you. So
Yes.
through my day job, I do speak to people, and they say, hey, we have a budget. I said, well, actually, I'm doing this as part of my work, because this is something I do as part of my organization, which is also me. I'll speak to you for free, but I also do say, if you want to make a monetary gift, I have 2 organizations I'll recommend to you. One is Mcmack Way Divert, the Divert site, and the other one, it's kind of like a selfish plug, is to donate to the Donald Marshall Jr. Memorial Award at the law school. And I will say that I am very proud to be one who led the development of that. And I'll tell you the story behind it. Junior, well, he wasn't well prior to his passing, and this goes back to August 2009. And the 20th anniversary of the Royal Commission was coming up, or 25th, I don't remember now. 20th anniversary of the Royal Commission was coming up. And I was speaking with someone at the woman at the bar side, Emma Halpern, and I always said, there always seemed to be this thing, and I say this, and I can say it because I'm a lawyer, there was always this obsession I found when it came to the wrongful conviction, the fishery rights case. Everybody wants to talk to the politicians, political leaders, judges, lawyers, everyone. And I always felt, from my perspective, I get emotional here, that nobody ever really talked to Junior. And I'm like, Junior, what do you think? How do you feel 20 years later? What have you seen? I know we got these stats, but listen, you were thrown in Dorchester. You were thrown in Spring Hill. How are you feeling 20 years later? I want to know. I want to hear. I want to know what you have to say. In all due respect to the lawyers and everyone else, I want to know what you have to say. This happened to you. These changes are because of you.
Yes.
I want to know, what are your thoughts? And so I was going to work with the Bar Society on, doing this massive interview with him. And I knew, unfortunately, because of the anti-rejection organ medication that he was on, unfortunately, his mental health wasn't the greatest. So I wanted to be very respectful, make him feel safe with talking about anything that could trigger anything. So I reached out and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. For the 20th anniversary, I want to hear from him. I don't want to hear from the other leaders, all these rich people. All due respect to them, I want to hear from Junior. The world needs to hear from Junior. If he wants to do this, I will drive to Membertou. I will record. I will run it by him. He can edit as he wishes, or I will edit. You tell him what you want to say. But at the same time, I say, if he doesn't want to talk about it, if it's too much, I said, I absolutely respect that. I will not even try to guilt pressure anything at all. And those closest to him responded back and he said, you know what, Junior would love that. He's not well, but Junior would love that. And I welled up a bit when he said, Junior's very proud of you. He's just too shy to say that around you. And I said, that's the feeling. Wow. I cannot tell you how extremely mutual the feeling is. And so I went to St. John's early August 2009 for a visit with some friends. It was a trip I had booked, and I said, all right, when I get back, I'll get a rental and I'll drive up to Membertou. And then my family started reaching out to me on the 5th, and they said, if you can, you might want to get to Sydney somehow. I don't think Junior's got much time left. And so I called WestJet. I'm like, listen, I got someone dying. Can you get me out of here? I'm sorry. All the WestJets are out of St. John's tonight. Your only flight out is the morning of August 6th.
Oh no.
Said, all right. So I got bummed out. So I called my sister, Sammy Jo. She lives back on the reserve. And I told her, not feeling sad. I think we're gonna lose him. And I don't think we're gonna get that chance out. And this was regatta and George Street Fest. If you know anything about them, it's a wild time. And I said, listen, I bought myself 12 bottles for this today. I don't know what to think or do. And she said, you know what, Junior, we want you to enjoy yourself. Just go ahead. Said, all right. And then the early morning of August 6th, I told my sister, call me when he goes. I don't care what time it is, just do. And then it was about I know there's a 30-minute time difference, so I'm messed up here. I think it was 2:20 a.m. So it may have been 10 to 3 back here. When she phoned me and said that Junior passed. And then I said, all right, no, thanks for telling me. It's just what I want to know. So fast forward a few days, I make my way up to Membertou. And then so I approached 3 women. And I approached his mother, Auntie Caroline. She was my grandmother's sister. So growing up, we've always heard of Junior's story all the time. It wasn't until I actually got towards the end of undergrad and I entered law school that I understood and appreciated the incredible multitude of the systemic failures as to why Junior ended up in prison. Growing up as in a family, everyone in my family always said that goddamn McIntyre, the lead police officer and the whole thing. And that, to me, that's what it was. It was one bad cop who, quote unquote, hate Indians. And like I said, no, it wasn't until I was older and actually was reading the Royal Commission, like, oh no, this whole system was wrong. It wasn't just one bad cop. It was like everything was wrong. So I approached his mother and I said, may I go to the law school and create a memorial award for Junior? All I just need is your permission. I will do all the paperwork. I will harass and bully and bother everyone at the law school. I will do everything. I just want your support and blessings. So Auntie Gotlin said yes. And then I asked his widow, Colleen Dorsey, may I do this? I will do all the paperwork. I'll do all the hustling. I just do it. The biggest thing is I need your permission and support and blessings. She said yes. And then the last person I asked was his best friend, Dr. Jane McMillan. I said, may I do this? And she said, absolutely. And I said, that's all I need to hear. Yeah. I will deal with the law school. And September 2009, and ironically enough, it was on the 10th anniversary of the Marshall decision from the Supreme Court. Wow. I was actually meeting with Michelle Williams at the law school, Professor Michelle Williams, the former director of the Indigenous Black and Mi'kmaq Initiative. And I said, I would like to do this for Junior. I said, I look at the law school awards, listen, and I am fine with all these nice tax awards from Bay Street, all these commercial awards from Wall Street, whatever. That's great. That's great. We have nothing here for Indigenous rights. Can we make something and can we name it after Junior? One of the biggest, most influential Mi'kmaq Indigenous rights champions in Mi'kmaq territory. And I was so happy that Michelle was totally on board with that. So, we approached Archie Kaiser, we approached the dean. I won't go into details of it, but there was like a lot of back and forth emails, drafting, redrafting. And I was very happy that we got the award out and we started awarding it in spring convocation 2010. At the time, there was no money in it. And I said, same thing that Archie Kaiser said, it's the principle of the award. And I had this crazy vision that to me, I want the award one day to have like the biggest monetary prize that goes with it. Because to me, that award is just as, if I do put a dollar value on it, to me, that award is just as financially valuable as Bay Street tax award for Bay Street firm lawyer. I'm just picking on Bay Street here. As Junior's award. Okay. Yes. Junior's award can stand right next to yours. And it's not about him taking your space. It's about sharing a space. It's about space that should have been there in the first place. When the law school was first created, people should have thought, we should do something on Indigenous law. And over 100 years later, we got something going. But yeah, so that's started with that award. And so that's why when I do the speaking engagements, I tell people, if you want to give, there's DeBert, big important initiative on
Yep.
art, history, and culture. Or if you want to, talk law talk, there's Junior's Award. Give
Yes.
to that as well too. And on a personal level, they're both important to me. Who knows? There might be another fund based out of Bootleneck First Nation that's important. That's great. Or maybe there's something in Escadopinich that's worthwhile. That's wonderful. This is just me asking people
Yes.
to give. I know some have said, they'll give to, oh, geez, I do not remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's one of the Indian Residential School Survivors Associations out in BC. And I say, no, I think that's great. But I always say, if you're thinking regionally, think about here as well.
Yes.
The big thing I would say is like, they have their history and their schools and how their schools affected their people. We have a different thing in the Atlantic. We have one major Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement recognized school in Shubenacadie. I understood sometime from 2015 afterwards, there was an apology for other residential schools in northern centralish Newfoundland for other, I believe they may have been Mi'kmaq and or as well Innu. And I apologize for not knowing that in detail, more detail. I should know that. And likewise, by here in the Atlantic in Mi'kma'ki, I say, you know what? We had 26 Indian day schools.
Yeah.
And we had two of the earliest three known Indian day schools in the country, predate Confederation. Two of them are Mi'kmaq,
Wow.
and Geskebeg. 1863, and one was 1861. There's one in Ontario that was also 1861. But I said three of the first oldest in Canada, two of them were Mi'kmaq in Mi'kmaq.
I didn't know that.
I actually went through the settlement agreement to read the stats and numbers and dates.
Wow.
So the last round to close, three of them were Mi'kmaq in 1993. And I apologize for not knowing the Mi'kmaq pronunciation of it, but Eel Ground First Nation schools, Indian Day School closed. My reserve school closed on October 1st, 1993, ironically, Treaty Day. So, hey, celebrate. And the last Indian day school to close in Mi'kma'ki was, again, ironically enough, the same area of the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School. It was a Shubenacadie First Nation. Their Indian day school closed, I think it was February 1997. And then what I will say was the ultimate ironic thing, or lack of a better term, the last Indian day school to close in the entire country was in Ganasawagi, Oka.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Like, that's the stuff that, people don't know those details. Like, I've been researching. I didn't know that we had the first ones, but of course we would. Of course we would. Look at what they did to try to get rid of us, with the scalping bounties and the relocations and everything. So that's why I wanted to have you on this show, because you take the time to get the details down. Like, you think about, what does the general public know about residential schools? Oh, the last one closed in 1996. Well, they're not thinking about Indian schools in their totality. Yes, there's residential schools, there's Indian day schools. It's the whole kit and caboodle. And so it's actually longer than 1996. And so that's why I love talking to you. I literally learn something new every time. And it's important to know,
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things I've been pushing in, so when this past summer I did another interview, I think it was Global or CBC, I don't remember. One thing I did say was, with Indian day schools, based upon what I've read of the class action settlement, we've had 699 Indian day schools across the country. Off the top of my head, I don't remember Indian residential schools. The number is lower. In terms of students, the last numbers I saw, when I crunched, 150,000 First Nation students for residential schools, 200,000 estimated so far on Indian day schools. More day schools, and a lot of those schools closed much later than residential schools. Here in Mi'kma'ki, we had schools closing in the 80s and 90s. Multiple schools. Residential school, we're all glad ours closed here in June 1967. But unfortunately, there's a double whammy question. Those students who went to those residential schools, when they went back to their communities, all of a sudden would say, hey, now you go to the Indian day school. And that's like, all right, that's double whammy of abuse you're going through. And so,
wow.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, that's
wow.
two types of trauma. Now let's talk about when you grow up, you have children, and what's that trauma being passed on to? And like, and it kind of goes back to what I said at the start. Yeah, it's great. We got all those racist laws in the 1800s, 1900s. We're still working on it. But listen, we're dealing with the effects of it now.
Yes.
I'm glad this ain't on paper. One other thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I love telling this to listeners. So the last school, residential school in Nova Scotia, and then, of course, that affected Atlantic First Nations, Mi'kmaq, as well as Wolastoqey here in the region, was Shubenacadie 1967.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize for not knowing the specific numbers, but I believe it was sections 114 to 122 of the Indian Act. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Empowered the feds to do all that stuff with the residential schools. In the late 1990s, and I believe this was after the last Indian day school closed, the province and the feds simultaneously passed the Mcmack Education Act, which basically abdicated any role either of those governments would have with Mi'kmaq education in communities in Nova Scotia, and they create Mi'kmaq Ganamoy out of it, and saying education is entirely in your hands. We're not going to have a say on it. And I'm not sure what kind of fun creative lawyer got involved in the draft of that legislation, but I always liked how in that act they went ahead and said on paper sections 114 to 122 are inapplicable in Nova Scotia. Fast forward to 14, 15 years. Before the TRC's final report came out in 2014, the Fed said, we don't have residential schools. However, as a gesture, as an act of reconciliation, we're going to formally actually get rid of these racist laws in the Indian Act with respect to Indian residential schools. So I'm like, okay, on principle, I want that out of your books. Get rid of the Indian Act if we could. But yes, we get rid of that from the books. But now, what I liked is I tell people sections 114 and 122 were inapplicable since the late 1990s with the Mcmack Education Act. So legally speaking, I say the Micmac were of Nova Scotia were the first to legally outlaw Indian residential schools in this part of Mi'kmaq, in this province.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, nice that you caught on feds. Well, we had a different government back in 2014. Yeah. I don't like to say his name out loud.
I know.
I'll say that part out loud though. So, but yeah. So again, that's like me continue to learn history. So
yes.
Initially, I was taught when in one of my posts, I think it was I don't remember what it was, October. Yeah, I think it was October 2021 when I was talking about residential schools and day schools. Someone drew my attention to the act, so I went to the actual legislation and I actually read through it, and then I just saw that little fun piece, 114 and 122 applicable. Like, wait a sec, Google search. Yeah. Got to that 2014 press release where the then government at the time said, we're going to formally repeal it as an act of reconciliation. So I just put two and two together. I'm like, so we actually got rid of the schools before you did. Just want to put that out there. So I would say that's a little fun trivia to share there. So
that's awesome. See, another reason why I had you here, because, you can take a really difficult issue that everyone should know about, but you find a way to come right back around and say, see why Mi'kmaq are kick-ass? Like, we're doing these amazing things. And I just knew you would have that kind of information. Like, I'm literally learning so much, and I'm a Mi'kmaq person, and it just goes to show when we share our information, it's not just for the Canadian public. We can't expect every Mi'kmaq person to know everything about Mi'kmaq and our people or history or current present. So when we share with each other, that's how we get all this knowledge and empowerment. So, wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. And it's funny you said that, because literally a few hours, I wouldn't even say driving back to my father-in-law with my wife. And then she asked me a question, and she said, what did Mi'kmaq people think or see or view dunes as? I mean dunes. I go, no, the things on the beach there and all. Oh, sand dunes, yeah. And I just told her, honestly, I don't know. And I said, listen, I know a lot. I said, I love learning language. Actual Mi'kmaq culture. I am a lawyer, so laws, how laws affected us, all that. But I said, I don't know everything. And I said, I could not take you into the woods and point out the various medicines that we had. I can probably name 3 or 4, unfortunately. I wish I knew more. Likewise, I know people who know so many. Yeah, so it's like I don't know every single little thing. I'm fortunate I can reach out to, Duma Young if I have a question about medicine, if I have a question about linguistic rules and pronunciations. I easily reach out to Bernie Francis. So, and sometimes with other language stuff. I have a friend back home, Alexis Googoo. She's a Mi'kmaq language teacher. I reach out to her as well. It's like, so if I don't know everything, we can still learn from each other on that one there. If I don't know, so like my ignorance, the limit of my knowledge, I will say this, ecological knowledge.
Yeah.
But like anything, I'm keen, more willing to learn right now. One fun project I am planning to do. I don't know if I can get it done in time, but it's for June 2022. So June is Indigenous History Month. October is Mi'kmaq History Month. And when I speak to groups, sometimes they may try to introduce me and saying, we have an Indigenous speaker with us.
Oh,
And I say,
yeah.
thank you, all due respect, but I'm a Mi'kmaq speaker.
Yes,
I'm not an Indigenous speaker.
yes.
Because I'm here to talk to you about mainly Mi'kmaq history. I'm not here to talk about, Blackfoot history. I cannot talk to you about Cree history. I'm not going to talk to you about the Dene language. I'm not going to talk to you about Coast Salish rights. I cannot, because I only know my own history. So therefore, I'm a Mi'kmaq historian or, educator, etc. Sometimes, but ultimately, I don't think I do. Sometimes I do hate the word Indigenous. I don't speak Indigenous. I speak Mi'kmaq. I'm like, the word Indigenous is an English term. It's, it's colonial in nature. I do understand it. There are laws, policies that affected First Nations from east to west. And we both know that. So sometimes I do understand if they say, hey, Jarvis, can you come to, here and speak to us about, Indigenous issues? I'm like, I could, but it's going to have a very Mi'kmaq perspective and focus on it. I cannot give you a Mississauga's New Credit perspective on it. Talk to someone in that territory, about that if you're looking for that particular perspective and history on it.
Yes.
So what I want to do is, I know many people have said, we hear it, read the TRC, read the calls to action. And for a couple of years, I've been trying to do research because normally I was a paper-bounded book reader. That's how I am. I love highlights. I still do that from law school. I mark things up. And then I was like, I found a print company that would print the entirety of the TRC. It was about 700. I thought about it. I said, you know what? I have an iPad. I'm going to download the whole thing. And I said, I'm going to read the entirety of the TRC. And I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to read the whole thing. I'm 100 pages in. And I have to praise the Honorable Sinclair and the commissioners, because just merely reading it is beyond depressing. It is sad and it angers you. And I'm like, I'm just a guy reading this. Imagine if you're the person doing this research, talking to survivors firsthand about, I was a child operating heavy machinery, and now I lost like half my forearm.
Oh my God!
Because I wasn't trained to use this crazy piece of farm equipment that only adults should be touching. And then I think to myself, yeah, Justin Sinclair just had to sit there, listen to that. And I asked myself, what kind of vicarious trauma did they incur
Yes.
talking to survivors firsthand? Like, I found him doing the Atlantic event, as much as beautiful as it was to be there with survivors, it's also hard listening to what they said. So I definitely praise shout out to those who worked so close with survivors and with the TRC, putting it together. And yeah, so I'm reading it and I'm making highlights as I go through it. That's what I love about the iPad, my Apple Pencil. I make highlights. And I said, one thing I'm thinking about going to try to do is with Indigenous History Month, June,
Right.
I want to see, and I don't know if Twitter will explode or what, but I'm like, I'm going to take highlights of what I did and see if I can put them in short tweets. Just like random highlights from TRC. And I'm like, now listen, before anyone accuses me of plagiarism, it's all from the executive report. It's a public domain document.
Yes.
So go ahead and read it if you want more details. It is a very challenging, hard, sad read. It reminded me a lot of reading Michael Harris's Justice Denied, the first book that came out about Junior, which was 4 or 5 years before the Royal Commission's final report came out. So if you want to hear Junior's story, that was the book. And, you know, obviously it angers you. Same thing reading all this. I just last night, I read about a few more pages and I was reading about burial policies. Burial policies, yeah. Priests, staff at the school, if they died at the school, they were given tombstones. Their dates carved on it. If kids died at the school, usually a white cross, and sometimes save money. Let's put 2 kids in the same grave to save money, or let's just pile all the kids in the same grave to save money. Sometimes parents would ask, "Can you please send my child's body back to the reserve so the child can be buried in our community?" Indian Affairs want to save money. No, we're not gonna. We're just gonna bury them in our own grave. And I'm reading all this, and I'm like, you just want to punch something. No, you want to smash something. You want to scream. And I'm thinking to myself, I cannot imagine what the chair or the commissioners
who
are drafting all this, the researchers that they had gathering all this, how much that must have hurt them. Because they're rereading this, studying it, and then like putting it together for the final report. So, you know, it kind of reminds me, in a weird way, it kind of reminds me of what I call crying. Actually, I don't call it crying. It is crying. When you have a good cry, either something's beautiful, something sad, something pushes you. And then usually I always almost find when you're done crying, you feel better. Yeah. One thing I've heard was like, you know, crying's cleansing for the soul. Reading what I read last night, I just got a little 101 pages now of the executive summary, and I am going to read the other reports as well.
Good grief.
Yeah, I find myself angry. A couple of times I teared up, but I said, out of that, I'm glad I'm learning this. If somebody doesn't have the time to read it, then I will talk to you about it. Likewise, you want to learn more, I go back and hey, I took intellectual property law in law school. I like copyright law, and I say that's public domain. Go nuts.
Yeah.
You're allowed. Just don't photocopy and charge money for it. You're not allowed. You can't do that. Yes. So I don't know. Maybe I'm probably still a lawyer at heart. Who knows? But so I want to see what I can get done in June. Once it's done, maybe I just might do highlights from the executive summary because there's like, as you know, it's different volumes with such incredible detailed work. And who knows, maybe that could be June 2024, 2025, so on and so forth. But I say, no, I'll do my part to get those stories out there to the best of my knowledge there, to the best of my ability.
And you're doing that. And I'm so thankful because, you know, like I'm not fluent in Mi'kmaq. So I can't talk about, I mean, I can recognize words, but I can't do the background context, you know, like how it's related to other things, how you can say the word with a different intonation and it means something totally different. Like, and that's important to know. It's like our way of life, our worldview, what we're thinking. And there's so many residential school survivors, day school survivors, 60 Scoop survivors, Indian Act survivors, you know, like people who were torn away from their language and culture. And of all the people in this Turtle Island, Mi'kmaq people got it the first, sometimes the hardest, but most definitely the longest. You know, like we it's just been so long. So for anyone who can share anything about Mi'kmaq language and the context, like you were mentioning, Bernie Francis, like I love him. He helps everyone out of the goodness out of his heart because his love for our nation and the language. I can ask him anything and say, does this make sense? Can I put this in the title? Is this the right way to use it? And he will just tell you a whole story about one word. I just love him.
Yes, I had the extreme privilege in October 2010. I actually got to do a Mi'kmaq language immersion camp with him under his direction.
Wow.
It was at the Tadamakush Center in northern Nova Scotia.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And for me, and again, I'm not sure if it's the sociology, criminologist behind me or the lawyer, but it wasn't so much I want to learn the word. I want to learn the meaning behind the word, to break down the rules of using the word as well too. And yeah, and I guess what bugs me right now for me is like I'm excited. I'm very happy I'm coming along with the TRC. But you know, I bought Daniel Paul's book last week. I have another book I'm reading. It's about the rollout of the Indian Act elections in Mi'kmaq from 1899 to 1950. Again, fascinating read. I guess for me, it's like you kind of get too busy with other things. You know, you end up neglecting some things. And like I just pre-ordered Candy's book. Very excited to read that. Huge shock, huge loss when she passed away last year. I still have her birthday card from last year that she sent to me. It's still on my fridge. And you know, just a nice message was, we'll see you in the new year. Yeah.
Well, thank you for mentioning her. You know, she's my cousin, and huge shock for everybody, like our family. But the fact that she got the text of her book out before she passed, which is talking about her journey and our like lived experiences and my family, like it's going to be a history book as well as it is an autobiography, as well as it is an educational book about lived experience. And it's a contribution to Mi'kmaq, just like I think about Danny Paul. You know, we were celebrating Danny Paul and the 4th edition of his book, We Are Not the Savages. And I think, I mean, I haven't read Candy's book yet, but I have, you know, I have some ideas about like what's in it. And those are the things that are priceless. That we need to, in all of our research that we do on everything else, like you were just saying, we can't also forget to dedicate time to Mi'kmaq people, Mi'kmaq, our history and our present. And that's what you're doing. You're literally doing the big picture and Mi'kmaq.
Thank you. Well, for that. Yeah, and I'm not going to dive into detail about it, but on my own website, after Candy passed away, I did publish a piece of just my time and history of meeting her from March 20, I think it was 21, 22, I don't remember the day. I have it written down, but March 2001, basically just everything of what I remember about her. I'm not going to go dive into too much detail about it, but I think it's hopefully it's a fitting tribute, and I'm most certainly looking forward to her book. Like I said, I pre-ordered it. Mid next week, I think comes out, and hopefully I think I'm gonna get it on the first day. So excited about that.
I think it's October 18th, right? October 18th. I think her partner, Denise, she sent me a text and said she was pre-sending out books because I think the official launch is October 18th. I could be wrong. This month, though. But But
well, Mi'kmaq History Month celebration.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And honor her and people like Donald Marshall Jr. and all the people that we have lost.
Yes. I want to shift the conversation over just a little bit when with that last word that you had there about loss. So a little bit I want to talk about, like, although I love doing cultural stuff, as you're saying, I also love running. And I was very fortunate to have done Boston this past April. And later this month, I'm actually doing the Marine Corps Marathon in Arlington.
What?
Yes, Arlington and Washington, D.C. There's quite a story behind that one. So this isn't a random marathon I picked. I first heard of it, I want to say 2018, 2019. And so it's a lottery system. Some races you qualify for, some they don't care, you just apply. And some it's like, no, you actually got to do the lottery system. So it was funny because I applied March 2020. And then April 1st, 2020, I get accepted into the Marine Corps Marathon. And I liked the emails. And they were like, we understand the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll reassess in a few weeks if the marathon will take place. I told my wife, and she's a scientist, and she said, this pandemic's not going to be over in a few weeks. And yeah, she was right. So I was able to defer for a while. But the reason I wanted to do it, I had one main reason to do it. Now I have two. The first one was because my best friend, Corporal Clint Joseph Bernard Phillips, who was from my reserve. We went to the same Indian Day school, graduated from St. Mcmack School. He was a U.S. Marine from 2000 to 2004. And yeah, he was a part of Iraq and Afghanistan there. Came back to the reserve, and PTSD being what it is, he took his own life in late September 2006. I was in second year law school at the time. And losing your best friend, he was only 24 at the time, sent me into a bad depression. I ended up gaining weight quite a bit to about 260 pounds. I barely exercised. I was very depressed. Went for mental health counseling, and I did that for quite a while. And basically by March 28, 2007, mentally I was healthier, and accepting his death and by suicide. And a part of me, I used to say, sometimes I wish he was killed there, because if he was killed over there, then I can just say, all right, he died in a war. But because he was the one who killed himself, I couldn't be mad at anyone else but him. And I realized what was hurting me was being mad at him, because growing up as best friends, we were never mad at each other. We never fought. Some friends fight, we just never did. And so I found myself being so angry with him. And so for me, I think that big healing for me was learning to forgive him for what he did, because I was unable to do anything else. I couldn't scream, couldn't yell, nothing. And he couldn't even apologize for the pain he caused because of his suicide. But I know why he did it, because he was hurting, PTSD, problems in life. And I said, what? I think I learned to forgive him. And that's when I started to heal so much. And, life went on, law school stuff. And then, I attribute so much of my success in life to him. And then I always said to myself, I'm glad I paid tribute to him and all that. But it's like, a part of me kind of wondered, can I do something physical? Like mentally, emotionally, spiritually? I think I brought myself to a good place of healing, a good place of forgiveness, and a good tribute to him. But I thought to myself, and I don't know, maybe this is the guy me talking, might be toxic masculinity in me, I don't know. A part of me thought, could we find a way to honor him somehow? What could we do? Should be something physical. It's a guy thing, I don't know. And I said, you know what? Let's do a race for him. Let's do the Marine Corps Marathon in his name and his honor. And I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And it's like, listen, I'm not. I was in my early 20s when Afghanistan and Iraq happened. Yeah, we all want to bash Bush. I did it too. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to care about the wars at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he was a young Mi'kmaq from a reserve.
Yep.
Who wanted to do something with his life.
Yes.
He fought for what he believed in. And, we can look at it a multitude of ways, but the way he always saw it is he did his part to help liberate the people. Because I always say, let's not pretend Saddam Hussein was an angel. I'm going to say that. I'll say that too. And he did his part. He served a full 4 years, received a dishonorable discharge. And so I'm like, no, I want to do this in memory as a tribute to him. And while I'm at it, hopefully I can finally finish a marathon in under 3 hours. That's my other goal. And then just a few days ago, a woman, a Mi'kmaq woman, Catherine Burton, who used to be the former chief of staff to the mayor of Boston. So she's done very well for herself, a Mi'kmaq woman.
Wow.
Her brother was a Marine as well. His name was Mark Sark, and he was from Lestigush First Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he actually worked as a band manager for my reserve for a while. He was nearly sober for 30 years. He did very well for himself. He became an artist. I think some of his art is at the law school, actually. I think
really?
Yes, I have to double check.
I got to check that out.
Yes, I think some of his work is at the law school there. And he passed away November 2019 from cancer. And he was only 56.
Oh.
And so his sister, Catherine, reached out to me and said, could you run a memory for my brother as well? And I said, yes, I will. And they said, I know I'm running for one Marine from Waigoma. The other one is from Lestigush. But I said, you know what? It's all one Mi'kmaq nation.
Yes. Yes.
They're both of the same nation. And I said, I will do it for the both of them. And a side story I want to share with you, and well, share with the listeners.
Yeah.
I texted this to a few friends last night. So I took my dog, Lulu, out for a walk at Shibby Park last night. I don't know about some people. I talk to my dog.
Yes.
I talk to her
all the time.
Yeah, I talk to her loud about everything.
Yes.
Come here. Come. Give me a treat. She's here. Yes. All right. I do want to introduce. She just came up. This is Lulu.
Oh my gosh, she's even cuter than in pictures. Look at her eyes.
It's love in your eyes, baby.
Oh, and the fur. Oh my gosh.
Yes, look, Lulu. You say hi to them.
Oh my gosh, I love dogs. Mine is sitting right here at my knees, trying to jump up on my knee. So I'm going to have to introduce my
please do.
Whippo. Well, my Whippet. And his name is Devo.
Devo.
Get it? Whip it good.
Wrong. Yes, I do. I do like that, by the way. So,
yeah,
so pretty. Say hi.
Oh, and he's only 5 months old, so he's giant, but he's just a baby.
Yes. So I was with last night.
Uh-oh.
Go see mom. So last night, we were walking through Shibby Park, and I was talking to Lulu, and I said, yeah, Daddy was asked to run for someone else in the Marine Corps Marathon this month, and Daddy said, I'm very honored, and all that. And I don't. One thing I don't talk too much about when I do Mcmack Education presentations is I don't talk a whole lot about spirituality. I'm an agnostic person. I don't know what's real or not. I don't know what's here or not in the afterlife. I don't know. Could be something, could be nothing, could be anything. But, I always said, though, I believe in miracles. And I do believe in good signs. And for me, I know some Mi'kmaq people don't like. I do love owls. I think owls are beautiful birds. And, Googoo comes from Googooquest, which is Mi'kmaq for owl, my last name. And last night we were walking through Shibby Park, and I was talking to Lulu just about the upcoming race there. And for the first time ever in my life, I saw a Googooquest. I saw an owl in the wild. The only ever time I ever saw an owl was always in captivity, ever. I've never seen an owl in my life out in the wild. And, and it's funny because just right before I saw the owl, and I took some beautiful pictures of it. I can send one if you like. Right before I saw the owl, I was just talking to Lulu, about Clint and Mark and Waywon and Lestigush. A part of me just kind of wondered to myself, if this was a message from the other side, if it's, maybe it's a sign or of some sort from them that, in this life, we always talk about people who are gone and how much we, love them and remember them and how much we miss them. And I guess I never thought to ask the question too much. The people who are gone, are they talking about us? And if so, how do they send messages to us that they, are thinking of us on the other side? Yeah. It's something I just play with. Like I said, I'm an agnostic person, so who knows? But at the same time, could you be agnostic and still believe in miracles at the same time? Like, I think
Yeah.
I could. So
That's so beautiful. Honestly, that's so beautiful. I remember it was, I don't know, years ago during like the I Don't Know More movement, and I had gone to Member Two, and I was doing like presentations to the community on what we can do, how we can join together and stuff. And Duma Young showed up, and he presented me with a gift that he said wasn't from him. It was from his mother, and it was a snowy owl wing. And I was just like, where did this come from? I've never met Duma Young's mother, and so I didn't know like what is this all about. And he said that she said that she'd been watching me, and she considers me a leader and strong and a warrior, and this snowy owl wing that she had for a very long time, she was waiting until the right person to give it to. And so ever since then, I've been trying to learn everything I can about Googooguis. And and so here's this connection. And the interesting thing about that is right before this happened, someone had gone into my bag and stole this eagle fan that an elder had given me a long time ago. And I felt so guilty, and I was like mourning it, and I felt irresponsible, and I felt like lost without it and all the symbolism. It was literally 2 days later, and I got this owl wing, and I thought, okay, is that an ancestor? Is that an ancestor doing that? Are they talking about us? So I just find that really interesting.
Wow.
That you have like a similar but different kind of experience.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that one as well too. And another one I wanted to share about that. I'm mindful we're just over an hour, but I do want to share another one that's very beautiful. It was at Junior's funeral and burial. At the time, I was unemployed. I was going to try to do some freelance work for the Bar Society, but I was without a vehicle, and I was living in the north end of Halifax at the time, and I was on EI. And so, of course, who was also at the funeral and the services were Judge Ann Derrick and Archie Kaiser, who, of course, Judge Ann Derrick was legal counsel for Junior. And I was very, very happy to know that, after the Royal Commission, Ann Derrick and Archie Kaiser kept in touch with Junior and the family, like all these decades later. And so I asked Archie and Ann, can I get right back to Halifax with you? Like, I don't want to take a bus. Like, no one's going to Halifax. Of course, I did. But what happened, a very beautiful symbol thought, and I shared this with Ann, and Archie have openly shared with me. They're both atheists, but I do have a nice story that I did share with her. So at the burial at the cemetery, we were removing like the flowers things that were on our jackets, vests, or whatever. And we placed them on top of the casket for Junior before the casket was lowered into the ground. Archie, I think he only removed like the petals on it. He didn't remove the stem. So it got stuck on his suit, and he didn't know that. So he tosses it in, and we go to the Member True Trade Convention Center for the solidate afterwards. Then an elder went up to Archie and told Archie, before you leave Member Two today, you have to go back to the graveyard and give the rest of your flower to Junior. You can't leave here with it. So, of course, Archie, he profoundly apologized and said, yes, absolutely, we are going to do that. And so when we were ready to leave and head back to Halifax, me and Archie got in the vehicle, but we went back to the cemetery. And we went right back to Junior's grave. That was just freshly covered. And a few feet away from it, I stood there with Ann. And then Archie walked a few steps further, placed the rest of the flower down, and I won't repeat in detail, but Ann just had a quick moment of reflecting about 20 years ago, the Royal Commission, just being at 1989 and all, and then like 20 years later, like now Junior's gone, and on a few months later, when we were doing the memorial award, Ann sent me a side private email. And, it was a lovely acknowledgement and thanks for just me doing all the running around to get Junior's award off the ground. And I told Anne that when we had to go back to the graveyard so that Archie could place the rest of the flower down for him before we left the community, I told Anne, in a weird way, I think that was Junior's way of saying he wanted to see you two one last time before you left. And Anne said, you know
Wow.
what? That works for me. And
Wow.
yeah. So I think maybe we can believe whatever.
Yeah.
Or not
We're
believe
all
something.
connected.
Yeah. But still believe in miracles and believe in nice signs. I think that was, and I firmly believe in my heart, before Anne and Archie left, Junior just wanted to say thank you and see you one more time before they left.
But again, a very sad and tragic loss, and you find a way to come back around with something nice about it. I know you'll never toot your own horn because you're a very humble person, but for all the listeners and viewers, this is one of the many reasons why I wanted Jarvis to come on here and talk, because he is that humble. And do you notice throughout this whole podcast and video, he's been crediting other people, for all of the things and the experiences and the influences in his life. And, again, he'll never toot his own horn, but this guy is a real leader. I mean, he ran the Boston Marathon. I put a little tiny picture up there for people who are watching YouTube, but that's no small feat, just physically. First of all, physically, that's phenomenal. The longest I've ever ran in a race was 15K, and the last 3K were the most painful moments of my life. But, and as a Mi'kmaq person to run in it, so you think about, you're representing Mi'kmaq people, your family, all the people you're running for, but also First Nations in Canada, right? So it's just, these things are so powerful and meaningful. And you don't know how many, say, younger people you've inspired to say, you know what, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to be like Jarvis Googoo, and I am going to run in the Boston Marathon. Or I'm going to be like Jarvis Googoo, and I'm going to take steps to learn my language. Even if I never had it in adulthood, I'm going to do that. And so that's what I mean, Jarvis. You inspire people to be better people. You inspire people to be thankful for all of our relations around us. You find a way to take the sad and find the heartfelt, the touching, the way in which we're all connected, the way in which we should be more connected. And like, you're a gift. And I'm so thankful. I mean, I wish I lived closer so that I could be around you more and just absorb it. But when I saw you at Danny's book launch, I was just like, oh, I'm just running over and hugging this guy. I'm not even going to ask him for his permission. I'm just like, there's Jarvis Googoo.
Well, Pam, that really means a lot, so much. And I think it's one of those things that you'll say in in the Mi'kmaq language when they say Ipsit Nogama, which translates to all my relations. It kind of reminds me of what Dumas said as a presentation he did in the old Aboriginal law at the law school there at Dal. Yeah. And he said that and I was in class once, and I was audited. This was after I graduated. I was audited in class, and he was explaining to a group of non-native students, it's not just about studying Indian Act law as how it applied to native people. Yeah. It's understanding, knowing we came from a different way of life. Like, yeah, the colonial system is that it's colonial. We have our own ways. And he said something, I've heard this before, but he said that when Jarvis had this law school celebration back home, yeah, some people were congratulating him, but not everyone, because you gotta remember, people were congratulating his family, the people that raised him, and they would say, you raised a good son, you were there for him, you helped take care of him. Yes. And like for me, I don't know my father. I wasn't raised by my mother. I was raised by my grandmother and my aunt and my family. And within all that, people would congratulate the family. And I think that's always, very important to remember. And it's like what you were saying when you introduced Dan last week. Um, Obviously, we know of your work. It's incredible. And then what you simply did was say, it was Danny who inspired me. And I say, you inspired me. Candy does. Junior, Clint, so much. And maybe that's what we mean when we say in Mi'kmaq and sit in Ogama, all my relations. It's because one way or another, nations come together. Nations help each other.
Yeah.
And maybe this is what we're doing today. So it's been we'll all in Pam, because not just for me, but for everyone else. And not just for inviting me onto this podcast, because what you're seeing today, when this interview ends, and when people listen to it, I can only hope that they can do bigger and better things than both of us put together, because when that happens, that makes our nation stronger.
Yes, most definitely. Oh my gosh, like I had this list of questions for you, and you literally answered every one of them in your stories and your experiences. Even like guests, I always ask, and how can we help? And you've already answered that. Contribute to Donald Marshall's award, for example. And that's like the first thing I'm going to do as soon as we're done here in like 2 minutes. I'm going to do that. And to the other institution, and really just to ourselves and one another. And this strong theme of everything you talk about our connections, our relationships, our experiences, our obligations, being true to ourselves and allowing us to have our own feelings and working through those, the sadness, the loss, the joy, all the people who support us around us. So my gosh, I could literally listen to you for another 6 hours, Jarvis, and I hope you'll come back on.
Oh, I would love to.
I'd love to have you back on and just do a health and fitness session, just about everything about Mi'kmaq health, Mi'kmaq fitness, our traditions around food and all of that stuff, because I just have this huge interest in that. So I'm hoping, I'm putting you on the spot, obviously, because you're on a podcast. Will you come back?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, my friend, I am here for you whenever you need.
Well, Pam, that means a lot.
And thank you again, Walalin, and thank you to all of the listeners and the viewers, if you watch this on YouTube afterwards, for listening to this podcast, having an open mind, hearing what people have to say, and doing what you can to share the knowledge. So you can literally share this podcast. You can put it in your classrooms. When you have a question about something, always hear it from the native voice first. Hear it from the Mi'kmaq if it's about Mi'kmaq people. Hear it from Wolastoqey, Haida, Wet'suwet'en. Like, make sure you're listening to the voices on the issues that are really important. So thank you all. Remember, you can like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever it is that you want. And I will see you next time. Keep living a warrior life. Alalia.